I'm Bailey Bates. Here are your headlines from Central Texas. A 30-year-old man facing serious charges connected to a toddler with severe injuries was just granted a reduced bond. 2-year-old Coulter is still recovering from a skull fracture from his forehead to the back of his head, a brain bleed, 11 fractures to his back, swelling in his neck, and a busted lip. Sydney Walker spoke with the boy's dad about his concerns on their path to justice.
A toddler, beaten, and the man accused, who sits behind bars, is a step closer to going home.
It doesn't feel good, obviously.
Kevin Pruitt, Coulter's dad, said it was a blow.
It just feels like he's kind of going to get away with this.
It stems from an incident on December 14th. Bell County Sheriff's deputies were notified that a toddler was being treated at McLean Children's Hospital for life-threatening injuries.
It was nerve-wracking when all the doctors said what they said.
Thomas Anthony Jones, Coulter's mom's boyfriend at the time, blamed it on a fall off the bed, according to the arrest affidavit.
He did say the guy did hit him in the face.
Doctors say it was more than a fall.
You wouldn't have the 11 fractures to the back, the fractured skull and the brain bleed and all that stuff with one fall like that.
Jones's original bond, totaled at $500,000, was lowered to $300,000.
Honestly, it was just nerve-wracking. I didn't like it at all. I didn't think that it was going to upset me as bad as it did.
Causing Pruitt to lose some hope.
Being on house arrest or whatever, but it's probably going to be, years. And of course, this stuff, it's going to settle down. The hype behind it's going to settle down. So who knows?
But Coulter's progress keeps him going.
He's playing. He's excited. He's kind of bounced off the wall. So you got to be careful, because you don't understand. He went back to his old self, I feel like.
To Coulter's dad, the next steps are clear.
Can't see him not being took in court, and he didn't hung himself as far as the evidence.
But all they can do is wait.
And it just depends on the judge that you get and see if they got any kind of heartstrings for little kids getting abused like that.
As of now, Jones remains in the Bell County Jail. If he bails out, he will be GPS monitored with restrictions limiting him to work, his mother's home, his attorney, and court. And more news, advocates for former patients of suspended Fort Hood OBGYN Blaine McGraw brought their fight for accountability to Capitol Hill this week. Shield of Sisters and the Cobos law firm traveled to Washington with 4 survivors to meet with lawmakers and demand systemic change. They spent several days on Capitol Hill meeting with members of Congress from both sides of the aisle, and Juliana Jackson has more on their push for reform in the military.
Not a partisan issue. This is a human issue.
Shield of Sisters and the Cobos law firm brought 4 survivors to Capitol Hill to share their stories with members of Congress. The group met with senators, House representatives, and the Democratic Women's Caucus.
We told them there's nothing you can do until we start holding commanders and perpetrators accountable, just like we would on the civilian side.
The groups are recommending 3 pieces of legislation aimed at preventing future cases of military sexual trauma. The proposed changes would make chaperones mandatory during medical exams. They would also expand the definition of MST to include family members and DoD civilians. They would hold commanders accountable for transferring problem service members without resolving issues internally.
This is about building a strong military, a united military, a military where service members and spouses can feel safe at the bases they call home.
Suspended Fort Hood OBGYN Major Blaine McGraw faces 54 specifications for indecent visual recording and other charges involving 44 alleged victims at Fort Hood. Andrew Cobos says his firm has filed a motion for default judgment against McGraw after he failed to respond to their civil lawsuit. They've also submitted Federal Tort Claims Act cases seeking compensation for clients from the Army.
The Army's been silent. They have not shared information about when McGraw was investigated, about what reports had been filed on McGraw, about what their knowledge of Dr. McGraw's abuses have been over this time period.
Shannon Huff with Shield of Sisters says 1 in 3 women in the military experience sexual trauma. The advocates say they won't stop fighting for accountability and transparency.
We're not done until the last person says, I'm the last one who was assaulted in the military.
McGraw remains in pretrial confinement at the Bell County Jail. The advocates say their mission won't end until the military takes real action to protect service members and their families. Those are your headlines from Central Texas.